welcome to Dudecast TV, where I'm a dude and I'm going to display some opinions. This channel is dedicated to bringing thought-provoking topics to your attention so we can get that noggin moving a little bit. And without further ado, to the video we go. In today's episode, I've entitled it The Competent Man, but I have a bit of a spin on that. And so what better way to start than with my typical Disney clip fashion, with a woman trying her best to be a man.
We've got a long way to go. Let's get down to business to defeat the Huns. Did they send me daughters? And I asked for sons. You're the saddest bunch I ever met, but you can bet before we're through, Mister, I'll make a man out of you. Tranquil as a forest, but on fire within. Once you find your center, you are sure to win. You're a spineless, pale, pathetic lot, and you haven't got a clue. Somehow I'll make a man out of you. I'm never gonna catch my breath.
Say goodbye to those who knew me.
Boy, was I a fool in school for cutting gym.
This guy's got him scared to death.
Hope he doesn't see right through me.
Now I really wish that I knew how to swim. You must be swift as a coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon. Time is racing toward us till the Huns arrive. Heed my every order, and you might survive. You're unsuited for the rage of war, so pack up, go home, you're through. How could I make a man out of you? You must be swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of the moon. We must be swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the dark side of
This entire scene, and the movie overall, is a story about a young woman born in a time where gender norms are established as law. And she is doing her best to come into her own, to become her own personal best, the best version of herself, however you want to say it. And she wants to become the type of person that her father and her family can be proud of, one that can bring honor unto the family. That is her main goal. So in the beginning of the story, she tries her best to fit in and be womanly. Fails miserably. So she goes, okay, well, if I can't be a good woman, maybe I'll be a good man, when she goes off to try and protect her father. Another abysmal attempt. So then what happens? As we see partway through this video, when she's told to go home, when she's told pack up, leave, I don't know how I could make a man out of you, what does she do? Right here. She's told to leave. And then what happens?
How could I make a man out of you?
She tries the old way. She tries to do what everyone else did. Doesn't work. And the lyric during this moment, how could I make a man out of you? That's not the point. It's not about being a man. It's not about being a woman. It's about being competent in performing a task.
You must be swift as the coursing river, with all the force of a great typhoon, with all the strength of a raging fire, mysterious as the darkest fire.
She does it. She completes the task, and she's the first one. Now how? Why? She did it herself. It was her own approach. It was her idea. That's why. She found the way that worked for her. And that's what matters. She wasn't trying to be a man. She wasn't trying to be a woman. She was trying to accomplish a task, to become competent in that arena. I call this video that I'm doing right now the competent man, almost ironically, but mostly because I'm not a woman. I can't make commentary on what it's like to be a woman in any way, shape, or form. It's not my place. I can't do that. I have no experience in the matter. So I ironically call it the competent man, even though my entire point here is that it's not about whether you're a man or a woman. It's about whether or not you are competent in performing a task. Now, if you could do that, if you are somebody who can become competent in something, then you can grow skillful in anything. And that can lead you down the road of becoming a competent individual, to which leads us to our next clip. Now we switch gears a little bit, but it's still the same concept. So let's check it out.
Okay, any questions?
Does this dress make me look fat?
Who's there? Concubines. Ugly concubines.
Now, that's what I call Mongolian barbecue.
So what did we see? We saw a bunch of men dressed as women completing a task. So as you can see, the movie does a great job of putting forth the notion that it doesn't matter man or woman, doesn't matter whether you act manly or womanly. What matters is your ability to perform a task. Are you skillful as an individual? Are you confident in who you are? That's the takeaway that I really want to bring home. And so now I want to delve deeper into this concept of being confident and coming into your own. And we're going to refer now to a conversation between former Navy SEAL Jocko Willink and clinical psychologist Dr. Jordan Peterson.
And so you know, again in the Harry Potter stories, you see he's touched by evil, right? He actually has a soul fragment that's embedded within him that's as black as anything can possibly be. That's why he could talk to snakes. But without that, he wouldn't be able to have any victory. And that's exactly right psychologically. Unless you can think the way that an evil person thinks, then you're defenseless against them, because they'll go places you can't imagine and then they win. And so the best men I've met, it was interesting even when I was in junior high and high school, because most of my friends dropped out. you know, by the time they were grade 10, thereabouts. And a lot of them were guys who developed physically. They're pretty powerful, and they're just damn sick of putting up their hand to go to the bathroom. It was like, you know, they're not doing that anymore. One of my friends got kicked out when he sort of challenged the gym teacher, you know, physically. And the gym teacher, he could do an iron cross. He was a tough guy, and so it was no trivial matter for my friend to stand up to him, but he got expelled anyways. But, you know, I noticed that it wasn't, it was often the kids whose character I admired that either quit or got expelled, and they were the tougher guys who were just sick and tired of following rules that didn't take into account their character, and then they'd go off and work in the oil rigs or whatever, and you could do that in Alberta at that time. And that was really hard work, you know, so it wasn't like they were necessarily taking the easy path. But like, a harmless man is not a good man. A good man is a very, very dangerous man who has that under voluntary control. And you know, you also see that like one of the central female stories, let's say, if the hero archetype is the central male story, there are variants of hero archetypes that are relevant to women, and one of them is Beauty and the Beast. And you know, Beauty isn't interested in the guy who isn't the beast. She's interested in the guy who's the beast, and that's exactly right, but she's interested in the guy who's the beast that can be civilized and disciplined, right, and who can use that.
So this brings to light a very important point, two important points, in fact. See, the issue with a lot of these Disney movies that I use in my clips is that they have very archetypal characters and character designs. We don't see the full background of every single character, everything they did right, everything they did wrong, all of their successes and all of their mistakes. Usually we see a very contained story based around a very generic character archetype. Same thing with Mulan. We don't see her enormous mistakes or her enormous successes, just this one contained story. And what Jordan brings up here is the fact that very often we don't live perfect lives. In fact, 100% of the time, we do not live or lead perfect lives. We mess up. We screw things up. And that leads to a certain amount of darkness in our lives. It leads to a certain amount of, oh, I did this thing. And you could go into good or evil or what have you, but the idea being that it's this thing, this event that occurred in your life that brings a level of darkness to you. And what Jordan states is that you are, as the hero of your own story, man or woman, to accept this darkness and to allow that darkness to afford you certain opportunities that you wouldn't otherwise be able to pursue. See, when you're perfect, when you are good, there's only certain sides of the coin that you can see. When you experience darkness, when you experience loss, grief, pain, suffering, there's something that can be gained from that, a different perspective to be taken. And so that hurt is something not only you can learn from, but also grow from. And so regardless of how much people want to avoid the pain, the suffering, and so on, it's inevitable. We can't stop that from happening. It's going to happen, whether you do it yourself or someone else does it to you. The idea, again, persists. That is now a part of you, and it is your job to accept that and then move forward with it. It can be baggage that weighs you down, or you can unpack it, see what's inside, and get something from it. Furthermore, Jordan talks about how when you have the female archetype in these stories, you know, there's a hero, like he mentions in Beauty and the Beast, it's the beast. And the female character in that story has no interest in the untamed beast. In that movie, it's Gaston. He's a beast of a man, but he can't be tamed. He has no civility to him. He's just wild. A beast, if you will. It's similar to the Hunchback of Notre Dame. It's a riddle. who is the man and who is the monster, right? Which is the same thing in Beauty and the Beast. Who is the man and who is the beast? And Disney does a very good job of painting these pictures of somebody who looks like the beast and somebody who looks like a man, but really it's the opposite. And so in that clip that I would show, but I'm trying not to make this video infinitely long, is that Belle, the female protagonist of Beauty and the Beast, prefers the beast because he becomes civilized. He becomes a man in that story who becomes desirable. He's very dangerous, but he is disciplined. And that takes me to my next point on how if you become a disciplined person, all of a sudden the pain, the suffering, the darkness, all of that becomes fuel and tools for you to use to build yourself up and take yourself from someone who is dangerous and uncontrollable and wild, a beast, to a man or a woman. Somebody who is confident, somebody who is skillful, somebody who is capable, somebody who is competent, if you will. So now that we've talked about the darkness and the beast in hypothetical terms, in fantastical terms, in terms of Harry Potter and Beauty and the Beast, and in scenarios like in Mulan, how is it practical in real life? Let's see what Jocko has to say about that.
You know, guys that would work for me or guys that would be around me, and they'd see me and they'd kind of latch on to the fact that I was tough and aggressive. And some of those guys, they wouldn't catch the other part, which was that I was politically savvy and I was working and I was maneuvering and I was, you know, figuring things out and talking to my boss in such a way that we could get where we needed to be. And I was doing that whole other side. And so I'd get these guys that would end up not doing as well as they should do because they were just, hey, Jocko's just ultra aggressive and he gets after it. And so that's what I'm going to do and I'll be in the same place. The guys that would do well are the guys that said, oh yeah, Jocko's awesome and he's aggressive and he gets after it. He's also working and he's also maneuvering and he's also massaging the egos of the people around him to make sure that they get positioned in the right spot where they can go to war in the right way. And so as I've gotten older, I've been able to tell people that more clearly, like, hey, it's not just about that side of the ultra aggressive. You got to be aggressive. You got to be willing to fight. You got to be willing to kill, and you got to be willing to die. At the same time, you got to be able to temper all those things in such a way that they can be controlled and disciplined.
As Jocko points out, it's not about striving to be anything in particular. In this case, a beast or a dangerous man or even a dangerous woman. You are not striving to be something. You're striving to be adaptable. You're striving to become that person who can be relied upon in any situation, regardless of it's good, bad, or anywhere in between. You want to become accountable and responsible, someone people can rely on in these circumstances. Not just some beast or monster, not somebody who's dangerous, untamed, and wild, but rather somebody who is disciplined in their actions. Somebody who, when they hear something, when they attain new information, rather than reacting to the information, they respond to this information. That's the key. Because then they're able to propel themselves forward in a direction that is more fitting toward what their desired outcome is, rather than just reacting to the situation. They become more adept, more adequate, more competent in whatever it is they're trying to do. Now, what happens when that system falls apart? As I mentioned previously, there is darkness involved. In life, in the microcosms of day-to-day, and the macro, spanning over your entire lifetime. And I don't know a more appropriate time or event that can be referenced than anything revolving around a person's suicide. There are few things darker that one can go through than dealing with the loss of a loved one, in particular a loved one who has taken their own life. Now, how does this tie in to being this disciplined, dangerous person, this person who has come into their own and made a life for themselves as their own unique individual. Let me show you.
What is it you think that you would change going back?
When I look back at Ryan, I showed up this way. I'm a CEO, CEO coach, Iron Man, I'm a black belt, author. If there's a problem, I fix it. My kids never saw me cry. As far as they know, I never did. I've failed at 13 businesses. I've almost been bankrupt 3 times. My wife and kids never knew. I protected them from reality. At least I thought I was protecting them. I thought that's the way I should be a dad. And then what did my 14-year-old son do? He looked at me and said,
"This is how a real man fights."
That's the way a man and a father is supposed to be. And so he showed up that way. Ryan was the class clown. Ryan talked all the time. Ryan came home from dinner, told great stories about how things happened, about his bully, and how he verbally trounced his bully and thought it was funny as heck. He never shared the fact that he had any problems. He had lots of them. Because he thought that that's how he's supposed to show up. And I regret that.
What would you teach fathers to basically help them talk with their kids?
First thing you do is you listen. You listen to how they feel and make sure they know that you care. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on at school? Have you ever felt sad? Have you ever felt mad? Have you ever felt anxious? And you understand that how they feel is how they feel. You can't fix how they feel. And this is what we as dads do. We fix stuff. How many times has your wife said to you, "I don't want you to fix my problem, I just want you to listen to me"? That's hard for dads to do because we want to protect our kids. When we go into overprotection mode, when we protect them every time they fall, so they can't fall, then what do they believe when they become 14, 15, 16, 17? They believe there's nothing wrong that's ever going to happen. We create kids that do not have any resilience in their lives. I want to do a little exercise with you. Close your eyes for a second. I want you to think back to when you were 12, 13 years of age. And I want you to put up your hands if you were ever bullied. Put up your hands if you ever felt like you weren't happy with your life. If you ever felt like you weren't as cool as the other kids. Leave your hands up for a second and open your eyes. All right, now put your hands down. Put up your hands if you ever thought that you would go ahead and share those deep, dark, painful moments with your kids. Yeah, I didn't, because I was like you. But I wish someone took the time to talk to me and tell me I might need to change. Had I been more vulnerable with my own kids, to share with them, like, yeah, you know what, I was bullied, and I was bullied. I didn't think I had a lot of friends. I didn't have a lot of friends. I never shared any of that with my kids.
If you could say one thing to Ryan, what would it be?
If I could say one thing to Ryan, I'd say I'm sorry.
You see, in today's day and age, when suicide rates are still mounting and still going up at record levels, how can we not talk about this? Because the reality is there is darkness in everyone's life, and everyone deals with it differently. But the ones who deal with it in silence and solitude are the ones who suffer the most and ultimately fall victim to it. So before I go on, there is one thing that I absolutely have to say. That no matter what you're going through, and no matter what you have gone through, or if you've lost somebody, you need to know it is not your fault.
Hey, Will. I don't know a lot. You see this? All this shit.
Look at me, son. It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. I know. No, you don't. It's not your fault. I know. It's not your fault. All right? It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean. Not you. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. Fuck them, okay?
What people don't realize the value of is that it's not about going at any of this alone. You see, when you become competent in something and you become skillful through those practices, you later venture forward and you come into your own and you become confident in yourself. But when you start interacting with other people, that throws in another variable. And when that happens, and you adapt further, and you become accountable, you become reliable, you take on the responsibility, and you're able to not just react, but respond to situations appropriately, follow through with your action, become a dangerous but disciplined person, man or woman, you still need to allow yourself to become vulnerable from time to time, because that is when not only can you be heard, but can you hear someone else. And when that happens and you make that connection with that person, be it a son or a daughter or other family member, your spouse or significant other, your best friend, or maybe a new acquaintance, it doesn't matter. To allow yourself to be vulnerable in very specific situations where not only can you be heard, but someone you're with can be heard by you. It's not always about fixing things. Sometimes it's about being there for those around you. In the small ways, the big ways, and everything in between. Because vulnerability takes an incredible amount of confidence and trust. And it's very hard to be vulnerable in a world full of darkness because you're so afraid that somebody will take advantage of that. But that's what makes you confident. That's what makes you strong. That's what makes you such a dangerous, disciplined beast. Because you know that in order to allow your relationships to grow and those bonds to solidify, and for you to truly be there for the people who are important to you or impactful to you, that you must be vulnerable with those people and around those people. And it goes both ways. You have to be vulnerable, not only to tell them what's going on with you, but so that they can tell you what's going on with them. Now, there's more to this than just being vulnerable with somebody and listening to somebody. There's more to take from it. You can go even deeper. But the idea is that there is darkness and there is chaos. And somewhere in that darkness, there is light, and somewhere in that chaos, there is order. But the idea is you have to find or create that yourself.
I suppose, because you might ask yourself, well, why bother confronting chaos? If chaos is the ultimate reality, then what the hell use is there in facing it? Because it's just going to reveal itself as the ultimate reality and drown you. But the myths always say the same thing. They say, no, if you confront what's really disturbing you, if you really confront it, you do it voluntarily, you're going to find order in it eventually. Or at least that's the only way you're going to find order. Now, it's not like these stories are optimistic, and it's not as if they give you a sure guide to success. That's the other thing. It's not like they're unerringly accurate, because you can be subsumed by chaos that's so total that even if you face it, you're not going to prevail. I mean, that's why people die. That's one way of looking at it anyways. But the mythology basically says this is your best bet. If there's a process that's going to work, this is it. And then you might think, well, the better you do it, the better the chances are of success, or the more consistently you do it, the better the chances of success are. And I think that that's a perfectly reasonable way of looking at it. I read a lot about the terrible things that people have done to each other. You just cannot even imagine it. It's so awful. So you don't want to be someone like that. Now, do you have a reason to be? Yes. You have lots of reasons to be. God, there's reasons to be resentful about your existence. Everyone you know is going to die. You know, you too. And there's going to be a fair bit of pain along the way, and lots of it's going to be unfair. It's like, yeah, no wonder you're resentful. It's like, act it out and see what happens. You make everything you're complaining about infinitely worse. There's this idea that hell is a bottomless pit, and that's because no matter how bad it is, some stupid son of a bitch like you could figure out a way to make it a lot worse. So you think, well, what do you do about that? Well, you accept it. That's what life is like. It's suffering. That's what the religious people have always said. Life is suffering. Yes. Well, who wants to admit that? Well, just think about it. Well, so what do you do in the face of that suffering? Try to reduce it. Start with yourself. What good are you? Get yourself together, for Christ's sake, so that when your father dies, you're not whining away in a corner, and you can help plan the funeral, and you can stand up solidly so that people can rely on you. That's better. Don't be a damn victim. Of course you're a victim. Jesus, obviously. Put yourself together. And then maybe if you put yourself together, you know how to do that. You know what's wrong with you, if you'll admit it. You know there's a few things you could, like, polish up a little bit, that you might even be able to manage in your insufficient present condition. And so you might shine yourself up a little bit, and then your eyes will be a little more open, and then you can shine yourself up a little bit more, and then maybe you could bring your family together instead of having them be the hateful, spiteful, neurotic, infighting batch that you're, like, doomed to spend Christmas with.
And that brings us full circle. This whole video, my entire point, is that you should do your damnedest to become a competent man or woman in your life. That means that you become capable and skillful. You become dangerous but disciplined. You're able to be vulnerable and to listen. But you're also able to accept the darkness and the chaos for what they are. To experience the suffering, the pain, the hurt. And do your best to continue living in spite of that. Do what you can to be a competent person, a competent human. Hi everybody, that's the video. You've been watching Goalcast TV. Like and subscribe if you enjoy my content. Links to the videos referenced in the description below. And thanks for watching. I'll see you guys next time.